Have you ever stepped into an elevator late at night and felt like something was very, very wrong? A floor that doesn't exist. A shadow quietly reflected in the mirror, but it's not yours. A door that opens, not to a hallway, but to a place that should never be found. Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories are told not to frighten you, but to remind you that some things still exist quietly where light cannot reach. In today's video, you'll hear 3 haunting elevator stories based on real accounts. A man vanishes after stepping into a non-existent 13th floor. A girl is replaced forever by the someone she saw in the mirror. And a technician sees something no security camera dares to record. If you feel a chill, feel curious, or simply want to know what happens next, hit subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but here, I tell stories for those who dare to step a little deeper into the dark. And if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate you more than I can say. Really, thank you for staying, even when the stories make you afraid to turn off the lights. Now then, it's time to step into the elevator. The ride begins, and this time, you won't be going alone. Caleb Morgan, a 29-year-old IT engineer, was the kind of person whose neighbors could go a whole week without remembering his face. He lived simply, worked remotely, ate instant noodles for dinner, and never once complained about life until he moved into the apartment building at 36 Wexley Street. The place used to be a hotel back in the 1950s before it was converted into low-income housing. Old, gloomy, with long, narrow hallways that seemed designed to hide something just out of sight. But Caleb didn't care. He just needed a place that was cheap and close to the metro station. And the 7th floor seemed quiet enough. The building had only one elevator, so old that its steel sliding doors screeched like someone dragging a blade across skin. Inside, the walls were lined with cracked, foggy mirrors. The buttons were worn bare, and the control panel flickered dimly like a dying flashlight. On his first night moving in, Caleb noticed something odd. The control panel had more than 10 buttons, 11 to be exact. But one of them, in the middle, had no number, no light, just a small metal square, ice cold to the touch. It looked like no one ever pressed it. He didn't think much of it. Until the 3rd night, when he got off work around 1 a.m., stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 7th floor, as he always did. But the display lit up with the number 13. He thought he was seeing things. The building only had 10 floors. He checked the emergency exit map thoroughly, but the red number kept blinking. 13. The elevator doors opened. No ding, no rush of air, no lights in the hallway, just darkness. A long, empty corridor of exposed concrete, coated in dust. A lone flickering fluorescent light at the far end. And deep in the shadows, something seemed to be standing there, unmoving. But there, Caleb froze. Cold air from the floor swept into the elevator like the breath of a room that should never have been opened. In the mirror's reflection, he saw himself, not alone. A figure, blurry, stood just behind his left shoulder, tall, long-haired, wearing something pale and translucent like a veil soaked in mist. He spun around. The elevator was empty, and when he looked back at the panel, the number 7 was lit. The doors closed. He didn't say a word. But from that night on, Caleb left his nightlight on, all night. After the night the elevator stopped at the 13th floor, a floor that didn't exist on any blueprint, Caleb couldn't sleep well. The image of that pitch-black hallway and the blurred figure in the mirror played over and over in his mind. He convinced himself it was just the lighting, fatigue, or his imagination playing tricks on him. But then it happened again. The following evening, after returning from the grocery store, Caleb stepped into the elevator with an elderly woman from the building. She didn't say a word, just stood pressed into the corner, back turned, eyes never meeting anyone's. As the elevator reached the 5th floor, Caleb glanced into the mirror. She was still there, but the reflection showed a different woman. Longer hair, a ghostly pale face, featureless. A face shrouded in mist, unclear, but unmistakably staring right at him. Caleb turned his head. The old woman stood still, eyes shut tight, unmoving. But the mirror was different. The figure in the reflection was still watching him. No blinking, no breathing. When the elevator reached the 7th floor, Caleb rushed out without looking back. After that, he began avoiding the elevator. He took the stairs whenever possible. But each time he was forced to ride, even just one floor, that feeling returned. The mirror reflected something off. Sometimes he saw a sweep of white fabric at the bottom of the mirror, but the floor was empty. Sometimes the ding chime sounded on the 13th floor, even though no one had pressed it. The breaking point came on the 10th night. Caleb was getting off a late shift and had no choice but to use the elevator, carrying a heavy laptop. He stood inside, alone, and for the first time noticed the unnumbered metal button had faint scratch marks around it, as if someone had pressed it. Many times. Before he could react, the elevator lights flickered. The floor number vanished from the display, then came back. 13. The doors opened. There was no hallway, just a completely different space. No walls, no floor, only thick darkness, the smell of metal, and something damp. Caleb stepped back, but in the mirror, the woman appeared more clearly than ever. Long black hair veiled her face, her white dress stained and grimy, one slender hand gently touching his shoulder. He felt nothing but a cold pressure seared to the back of his neck. The mirror no longer reflected him, only her, alone in the elevator, staring out, smiling. Caleb backed toward the door. There was no way out. In the bottom right corner of the mirror, words began to appear, as if someone was writing from the other side. "Let me out." The lights went out. When they came back on, Caleb was on the 7th floor, alone. But on his shirt's shoulder was a handprint, slender, cold, and wet. That night, rain poured down in sheets, and the wind howled through the security booth window on the ground floor. Caleb had just finished a remote shift for a cybersecurity firm. The clock read nearly 2 a.m. His eyes burned, his wrists ached, but the chill in his bones didn't come from the weather. It came from the thought of stepping into the elevator once more. The building was silent. Not a sound except the steady rain tapping like someone knocking on a door they didn't dare to knock louder. Caleb stood before the elevator doors, took a deep breath, and told himself,
"Just one floor. Everything will be fine."
The elevator doors opened in complete silence. No chime, no mechanical whir, as if it had been waiting for him. He stepped in, pressed 7, and stared at the control panel, avoiding the mirror. But his hand was trembling, and his fingers slipped, landing on the unmarked metal button. A soft click echoed, like a switch flipping after years of silence. The lights went out. The elevator shook violently, then stopped. Utter stillness. Caleb tried to pry the doors open. Nothing. He tried turning on his phone flashlight. The phone was black, dead, and unresponsive. He slammed his fist against the panel. No response. The smell of rust, mildew, and something sharp and metallic, like old blood, began to seep from the cracks in the walls. After a few seconds, or maybe minutes, he couldn't tell. The ceiling light flicked back on, but this time, it wasn't the familiar warm yellow. It was stark white, like the lighting in a morgue. And then, the door slid open. It wasn't the 7th floor. It wasn't any floor in the building. In front of Caleb stretched a long hallway, flanked by wooden doors left ajar, each topped with a shard of broken glass. The rooms behind them black as the eyes of the dead. At the end of the hall, one door stood wide open, a dim light spilling from within, and something was hunched on the ground inside, its back turned. Caleb tried to press close, but no button was lit. Nothing could be pressed. A soft rustling sound echoed. The figure at the end of the hall began to move. It didn't stand. It didn't crawl. It slithered. Bones cracked. Ragged breathing filled the corridor, but the elevator mirror showed nothing. Only Caleb, alone, severed from everything familiar. He screamed,
"Take me back to the 7th floor. Take me back."
No one heard. But in the mirror, the woman's reflection slowly appeared, not behind him, but inside the elevator, beside him. She tilted her head, her eyes dark and sunken. Her mouth didn't move, but a voice echoed,
"Too late."
The doors closed. The elevator began to descend without stopping. No floors, no destination. And Caleb, as if he had never existed, vanished from the building that night. 1 week after Caleb vanished, the building manager called the police after noticing that no one had entered or exited apartment 707, even though the lights inside remained on. The laptop was open, coffee sat cold on the table, and the wallet and keys were untouched. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. Only one strange detail. The elevator that night had stopped working for exactly 6 minutes and 66 seconds. Data recorded by the system. Something virtually impossible. The police did everything they could to trace Caleb. They reviewed all the security footage, but the recording from that night, from 1:59 to 2:06 a.m., was completely blank. Not corrupted, not glitched, just blank. No images, no data, as if no one had ever stepped into the elevator. After a brief investigation, the case was closed with a vague conclusion: disappearance under unknown circumstances. The building continued operating normally. Residents used the elevator every day. All but one, Mr. Wendell, a 78-year-old resident from the 9th floor, occasionally mentioned Caleb while smoking on his balcony. Another one, he said, "Back when I moved in 1985, there was another young man like him. Disappeared after talking about the 13th floor." When asked more, Mr. Wendell simply smiled.
"Some floors aren't built with concrete, but with the memories of the dead. And if you hear someone call your name from inside the mirror, don't answer."
No one knew why he said that. No one believed him. Until a few weeks later, when a new tenant moved into Caleb's old apartment, and the elevator once again lit up with the unmarked button. The new tenant asked the building management,
"Does this building have a 13th floor?"
The manager just stared at him for a long moment, then quietly replied,
"We never built that floor."
And on the security footage that night, a faint white figure appeared again, standing inside the elevator. It wasn't Caleb, and it wasn't human anymore. By day, Fairview Tower looked no different from any other high-rise. Blue-tinted glass, a marble-floored lobby, security guards in suits standing stiffly by the revolving doors. But at night, when the lights dimmed, floor by floor, when the clacking of keyboards and the hum of conversation fell silent, it became something else entirely. A hollow structure of steel and glass, gloomy and cold like a coffin suspended in the sky. Rachel Hayes knew this well. She was a 24-year-old legal assistant working for a major law firm on the 27th floor. She wasn't afraid of staying late, at least not before the strange things started happening. Blank pages printing out. Office doors were left ajar even though she clearly remembered locking them. And footsteps echoing from the stairwell at 2 a.m. when no one else was supposed to be in the building. That night, Rachel worked later than usual. The rain was pouring outside, and the wind whistled through the seams of the glass windows, like someone softly moaning. Near 3 a.m., she packed up her laptop and hurried to the elevator lobby on the 27th floor, pressing the call button. The doors opened. No one inside. She stepped in, shivering as the fluorescent light above flickered. A thin streak of rainwater glistened across the steel floor, even though no one had entered before her. She pressed the ground floor button, then moved to the corner, pulling her coat tighter around her. The elevator moved normally until the 15th floor. Then it stopped. No shaking, no warning. Just a dry ding, followed by silence. Rachel glanced at the floor display. All numbers had gone dark. A soft click came from behind her, faint but sharp enough to make her chest tighten. The mirror inside the elevator was foggy with condensation, but she still saw a shadow, not clearly defined, not matching her movements. A figure was standing just behind her left shoulder, only a few steps away. Rachel turned around, nothing. She looked back at the mirror. The shadow was still there, and this time, it had moved closer. Rachel wasn't the type to panic easily, but the moment she saw the figure in the mirror, tall and thin, head tilted unnaturally, standing still behind her, her whole body froze, as if every ounce of warmth had been sucked out through the elevator's vents. She whipped around. No one. No footsteps. No breathing. Only the flickering lights and the faint screech of aging cables above. She turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there. This time, closer, blurred like a smear of dust across the glass. But its shoulder and head were now almost touching Rachel. She backed into the elevator wall, her hand trembling as it fumbled for the control panel. All the buttons were dark, nothing to press, no way out. The doors remained tightly sealed as if welded shut. Then, the mirror reflected a subtle movement, a hand, a pale, elongated, bony hand, reaching from behind Rachel in the mirror and touching her shoulder. The sensation was ice cold, like dry ice gliding across bare skin. She screamed, spinning around. Nothing. She pounded on the doors over and over, shouting,
"Is anyone there? Help me."
No answer. Only the flickering light and the distant sound of rain outside. Then, a whisper echoed, not clear whether it came from the speaker, the mirror, or inside her head.
Don't turn around.
The words were soft as breath, but screeched in her ears like nails across metal. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, trying to control her breathing, clutching her handbag strap like it was the only real thing left. She counted down in her head. 5, 4, 3. The lights flared back on. The elevator gave a slight tremble. The floor display returned, this time showing level 3. A soft ding sounded. The doors slowly opened. Rachel stepped out, nearly slipping on the wet hallway floor. But when she turned back to look at the elevator, the mirror didn't reflect her. It showed another girl in a white dress, with long hair, her face obscured by shadow. She was still standing inside the elevator. The doors closed. The elevator descended. Rachel never told anyone what happened. But from that day on, She never rode the elevator alone after 2:30 a.m., and she avoided looking into the mirror once the doors closed. A week later, a night shift janitor noticed something strange. The mirror inside the elevator had fogged over and wouldn't clean off, as if someone was breathing on it from the inside. And at exactly 3 a.m., the elevator camera feed always cut out for precisely 66 seconds. Since that night, Rachel avoided the elevator whenever she could. But what happened afterward made her realize some things can't be avoided. It's not about where you choose to stand. It's about where they choose to appear. One Monday morning, as she stepped into the ground floor lobby, Rachel overheard two maintenance workers talking.
Happened again.
One said, holding a tablet looking up at the ceiling.
Elevator 2's camera?
Exactly 3 a.m.
Exactly. 66 seconds. And you know what's even weirder? Someone pressed the 3rd floor.
Rachel froze. She stepped forward and asked,
Is there someone working overnight on the 3rd floor?
The two men exchanged glances. One shook his head.
That floor's been locked down since last year. Cold air leaks, structural issues. No one's allowed up there. Even the key cards don't work for floor 3.
That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She wasn't afraid of ghosts, or at least she thought she wasn't. But something, whatever had touched her that night, hadn't left. By Wednesday, she decided to go back, not out of curiosity, but because the fear had become a fever under her skin, eating away at her every night. She returned to the building just before 2:50 a.m., wearing a long coat and carrying a small body cam clipped to her bag. Elevator 2 opened. She stepped in. Alone. She pressed floor 2. The button lit up. Then, suddenly, the button for floor 3 lit up too, though she hadn't touched it. She swallowed hard, gripping her bag strap tightly. The display ticked. 1, 2, then 3. The doors opened. Floor 3 was bathed in pale green fluorescent light. The walls were covered in plastic sheeting, the concrete floor damp with mold, ceiling vents dripping with condensation. No one there. No sound. But at the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly ajar. A dim light leaked through the crack. Rachel stepped out. The camera on her chest trembled with each breath. She crept closer. A faint hiss echoed, like someone whispering between the walls. She gently pushed the door open. Inside, there was nothing, except for a mirror hanging in midair, frameless, suspended in the middle of the empty room. Its surface fogged over, but from the inside. She looked in. She didn't see herself. She saw the girl in the white dress, standing behind her, hand resting on her shoulder, and her lips moved. This time, don't leave. The elevator doors slammed shut behind her. The floor display lit up, B1. The elevator began to descend. After that night, Rachel Hayes never returned to the office. No one saw her leave the building. No resignation letter, no sign of a move. Just a dust-covered desk and a handbag left untouched in a drawer. Police launched an investigation, but every camera in the building the night Rachel vanished showed no activity or rather, they did work, but only recorded emptiness. Minutes-long footage showed the elevator doors opening, closing, and no one stepping in or out, as if even the cameras had been deceived. The 3rd floor was thoroughly inspected. All doors were sealed, and every room was empty. No mirror, no trace of anyone having been there. But in the electrical room, a technician found something strange. A strip of masking tape, faint red ink scrawled across it. This time, I saw its face. On the night Rachel disappeared, exactly at 3 a.m., the security guard heard the elevator chime from the 3rd floor, a floor no one had access to. By the time he got there, the doors had closed. The elevator descended. The display flashed, B1, then went dark. The story faded. The office hired someone new. Life went on. Until one night, a night shift security guard sent a fragmented message to a coworker before his phone shut off. "I'm trapped in the elevator. I saw her. In the mirror." Seconds later, one final message was sent, its origin unclear. She doesn't want to reflect anymore. Fairview Tower remains open, but the new guards avoid taking the elevator after 2:30 a.m. because sometimes you don't see yourself in the mirror, because someone else is already standing there. Dylan Price used to believe in data. Servers don't lie. Cameras have no emotions. He was a security systems technician for a chain of luxury apartment buildings, and for 5 years, nothing escaped his watch until he was assigned to Building 96 on Elmwood Street. A modern complex, outfitted with cameras in every hallway, every elevator corner. Even a sneeze would get recorded. And yet, at exactly 2:17 a.m. each night, something strange happened. Elevator 3's camera, the only one connecting the basement to the 20th floor, suddenly lost signal for exactly 88 seconds. No image, no sound, no system error, just emptiness. At first, Dylan thought it was a glitch, but after 3 consecutive nights, all at the same time in duration, he began digging deeper. The system logs showed no interruptions. The security console recorded movement. Someone had used the elevator, but no footage existed. On the 4th night, Dylan rewound the footage from the previous night. The screen turned black at 2:17:03, but just before the signal cut out, on a single frame, just one, something appeared that made him jump from his chair. A blurry, almost smudged frame, but clear enough. The elevator doors had opened, not to a hallway, to an old brick wall dimly lit with yellow light and a figure stepping out. Tall, thin, head bowed low, and faceless. Dylan saved the frame, but by morning, it had vanished from the hard drive. No temp file, no edit logs, as if the system itself had refused to store it. That night, when Dylan checked the control panel, something made his blood run cold. Elevator 3 had been logged as stopping on a floor that didn't exist. Not the basement, not a service floor, just FLR-X. After that night, Dylan couldn't take his eyes off the surveillance screen. Every time the clock neared 2:17 a.m., he stopped everything, sat upright, eyes fixed on the feed from Elevator 3. He knew he had seen something, not a glitch, not a flickering light bulb, but a truth that had been erased. On the 5th night, he decided to install external recording software, unlinked from the main system, a personal computer, a separate hard drive, impossible to auto-delete. At 2:16, he started recording, and right at 2:17:03, the image distorted again. But this time, it wasn't pitch black. It was static, as if the camera were staring through thick water. In the scrambled frames, Dylan saw the elevator stop. The doors opened, but not to any hallway he recognized. Once more, it revealed that same raw brick space, dimly lit, dusty floor, like a forgotten wartime basement. From the left edge of the frame, someone stepped in, entirely clad in a long black coat that touched the floor, with gloved hands, head bowed. The camera couldn't capture the face. When the figure turned, seemingly to look directly into the lens, the image shattered, pixelated fragments bursting like a system rejecting what it saw. Dylan lunged to stop the recording, initiating a fast backup. But just seconds later, The file vanished from the drive. No error, no alert. Even the external software had been wiped clean, as if it had never existed. The next morning, when he returned to the surveillance room, the door had been relocked. The building manager told Dylan he was on technical leave. No email, no official notice. Before leaving, Dylan secretly took a printout of the building's internal floor registry. Each floor had a system code, but between basement B2 and the ground floor, there was one strange entry crossed out in red ink, FLR-X. No description, no architectural plan, only a note. Do not display on user system, locked. That same night, Dylan received an anonymous email. No sender, no subject, just a single line of text. You've seen what wasn't meant for you. Leave. Attached was one photo, a still shot of Dylan sitting in front of the screen at 2:17 a.m., eyes locked on the camera feed. But one detail made his blood run cold. The photo was taken from behind him, and in the frame, he was not alone. Right behind him stood the figure in the black coat. Dylan was never the reckless type, but fear, when it runs deep enough, can drive a person to do the unimaginable. Like what he was doing at 2:10 a.m., coat zipped, hidden camera clipped inside his bag, stepping into elevator 3 with one simple yet insane intention: to go to FLR-X. He didn't know what it was, but each night of lost signal, each frame erased, each nameless message, they all pushed him to a point of no return. The elevator was empty. The mirror reflected only himself, pale, sunken-eyed, sweat soaking through his shirt despite the cold. He stared at the panel. No button marked FLR-X. But as the clock ticked to 2:17, the display began to flicker, and just below the ground floor button, an unmarked button quietly lit up. Dylan didn't hesitate. He pressed it. The elevator shuddered. The lights inside dimmed, shifting from sterile white to the sickly yellow of sodium bulbs in abandoned buildings. The panel displayed a line, FLR-X-access granted. The doors opened. No hallway, no people, no sound. Just a concrete corridor stretching endlessly forward. The walls on either side were moss-covered, lined with torn warning notices barely clinging on. Drag marks etched the floor, like someone had been pulled away, nails scraping against cement. Dylan stepped out. His footsteps echoed, as if inside a massive steel pipe. He turned on the camera. The LED blinked, low battery, even though it had been fully charged. At the end of the corridor was a rusted steel door, slightly ajar. He gave it a push. Inside, an empty room. At the center, an old elevator from the 1950s, its doors already open. No control panel, no mirror, just a jagged line of text scratched into the back wall. No one steps out a second time. The lights went out. Dylan turned to find the elevator was gone. No corridor, no door, no way out. He was trapped, in a place where time didn't pass. And from the darkness behind him came footsteps, unhurried, calm, but getting closer, very close. Dylan closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he silently prayed for something, anything, or anyone to bring him back. But no one answered. Only a whisper rose from the tiled floor.
This time, it's your turn to guard the door.
1 week after Dylan Price vanished, Building 96 continued operating as if nothing had happened. No one noticed that the quiet night technician no longer showed up. No one questioned why the control panel of Elevator 3 had been replaced, officially due to routine maintenance. However, the building manager received an anonymous email. No identifiable sender, no traceable address. Attached was a short note, hastily typed, with disjointed formatting. If someone is reading this, it means I'm still here, not alive, not dead. This floor doesn't exist in the blueprints. No signal, no exit. Don't look for FLR-X. Don't press the unmarked button. And most importantly, if the mirror in the elevator doesn't reflect you, close your eyes. It's no longer a mirror. The email is auto-deleted after being opened. Elevator 3's camera still loses signal at exactly 2:17 a.m. each night for exactly 88 seconds. The downloaded data every morning confirms the elevator still operates, but the control panel now logs its stop at an undefined floor, no longer labeled FLR-X, just a string of jumbled characters, DY_AN. One resident reported that, late one night, he was returning home. When the elevator doors opened, the mirror didn't reflect him, but someone else. A man in a security jacket, eyes sunken deep, skin pale as if soaked in water. That man stared straight at him, then gently shook his head. The doors closed. The elevator ascended. The resident told no one. He moved out the next day. You've just listened to 3 elevator stories, 3 doors that opened into places no one would ever want to enter a second time. And if you're still here, it means you dared to take the journey all the way through. Thank you for staying until the end. Every view, every subscription, every comment from you. It is a small light that keeps me from getting lost in these dark tales. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit like, so I know you want to hear more. Leave a comment below if you've ever had a creepy elevator experience, or if you've simply felt a chill whenever the mirror inside starts to fog up. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Not every story ends here. Some are only just beginning. I'm your name, channel name. See you in the next video.